Saint Marlowe Hospital stood as a grim relic of the past, a decaying monument to suffering. Its skeletal frame loomed against the dusky sky, a jagged silhouette crowned by shattered windows and rusted beams. Locals avoided it like a curse, the air around it heavy with whispered tales of tragedy and inexplicable horrors. For decades, its reputation as one of the most haunted sites in the country had drawn thrill seekers, ghost hunters, and the occasional foolhardy explorer. Few dared to venture inside, and even fewer returned with their sanity intact. For Anna, Blake, Kelly, and Marcus, this was precisely the draw. "Look at it," Marcus said, adjusting the strap of his backpack as they approached the hospital gates. His camera hung around his neck, ready to capture the supernatural proof he had sought for years. "This place practically screams haunted, more like condemned," Anna muttered, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She scanned the surroundings, her cautious gaze lingering on the jagged iron gates and the peeling paint that resembled rotting flesh. Blake, ever the fearless leader, pushed the gates open with a groan that echoed ominously. "Relax, Anna. It's just an old building. We've done this before, abandoned asylums, factories, tunnels. What's a hospital compared to those? Maybe the fact that people say it's cursed?" Anna shot back, her unease evident in her voice. "Rumors." Kelly rolled her eyes, her tone dripping with skepticism. "These stories always come from bored locals who want to keep kids away from dangerous places. They're just urban legends, nothing more." As they stepped inside the overgrown courtyard, Marcus couldn't help but glance over his shoulder. "You might not believe in it, Kelly, but places like this, they remember. The walls, the floors, they hold on to things. Pain, suffering, death. It leaves a mark." The group fell silent as they stood before the hospital's entrance, a pair of double doors hanging askew, their once sterile white paint now mottled with grime and rust. A cold wind seemed to exhale from within, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. Blake smirked and nudged the doors open with his foot. "Let's see if your ghosts show up on camera, Marcus." The interior was worse than they'd imagined. Time had ravaged the hospital, leaving it a maze of crumbling walls, sagging ceilings, and scattered debris. The air was damp and stale, the faint smell of antiseptic mingling with decay. As they moved deeper into the building, the temperature seemed to drop, the oppressive stillness broken only by the echo of their footsteps. Shadows danced on the edges of their flashlight beams, and more than once, Anna thought she heard faint whispers that stopped the moment she turned her head. They reached the main hallway, where a faded sign read, "Saint Marlowe Hospital, healing the nation since 1923. Beneath it, someone had scrawled in red paint, "Abandon hope." Marcus lifted his camera, the lens trained on the ominous message. "Looks like we're not the first ones here." A soft chuckle echoed through the corridor, faint and distant. The group froze, their flashlights swinging toward the source of the sound. "What was that?" Anna whispered, her heart pounding. "Probably just the wind," Kelly said, though her voice lacked conviction. But Marcus wasn't so sure. The faint chuckle had sounded too human, too deliberate. He lowered his camera and whispered, "Let's keep moving." Unbeknownst to the group, a shadow shifted in the periphery of their vision, following their every move. Chapter 1. Echoes of the Past. The stench of decay grew stronger as the group ventured deeper into Saint Marlowe Hospital. The flashlight beams illuminated the peeling paint on the walls and faded signs pointing toward wards that hadn't been entered in decades. Each step echoed unnaturally, as if the hospital itself were amplifying their presence. Did anyone else feel that? Anna stopped suddenly, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Feel what?" Blake asked, his voice cutting through the silence. Marcus rubbed his arms, trying to shake off the sudden chill. "The temperature. It just dropped like 20 degrees. Anna nodded, her unease growing. "It's not just that. It feels wrong, like something's watching us." "Great," Kelly muttered, rolling her eyes. "Haunted air conditioning. What's next?" The sarcasm faltered as the faint sound of whispers floated down the corridor. The group exchanged uneasy glances. The voices were distant yet distinct, their words unintelligible but laced with a sense of urgency. Blake shone his flashlight toward the end of the hallway, revealing a rusted gurney tipped on its side. "It's probably just the wind," he he said, more to himself than the others. Marcus moved closer to a nearby bulletin board. Faded photographs and handwritten notes clung to the cork like ghosts of the past. He leaned in, reading aloud. To all staff, due to the outbreak, all non-essential personnel are restricted from the isolation ward. Do not enter without proper equipment. Outbreak? Anna asked, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded. Yeah, Saint Marlowe was a quarantine hospital during a plague outbreak. Hundreds of people died here. They were desperate, patients, doctors, nurses. Most of them never left. Anna stepped back, her flashlight catching a flicker of movement. She whipped it around, but nothing was there. Did you see that? She whispered. See what? Blake asked. I. Her words were cut off by a sudden flicker of the overhead lights. The bulbs, long dead and coated in grime, buzzed faintly before going dark again. This is getting creepy, Marcus muttered, clutching his camera tightly. The group pressed on, their footsteps growing more hesitant. At the end of the corridor, they found a set of double doors marked isolation ward. Marcus pushed one open, revealing a room filled with overturned beds and scattered medical equipment. The walls were lined with rusted shelves, their contents long forgotten. It was there, in the corner of the room, that Marcus spotted it. A small leather journal, its cover cracked with age, lay half hidden beneath a pile of yellowed papers. What's this? He murmured, picking it up. What is it? Blake asked, peering over his shoulder. It's a nurse's journal. Marcus flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing as he read. The entries were hurried, the handwriting jagged as though written in desperation. Day 17, Marcus read aloud. The patients are getting worse. The symptoms are unnatural. They whisper at night, even when sedated. Dr. Hall insists we continue, but I'm starting to think this isn't medicine anymore. It's something else, something dark. Anna felt her stomach twist. What does that mean? Marcus flipped to the last page, his face paling. The fire was no accident. We had to stop it. If anyone finds this, don't trust the shadows. They're alive. A loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of a gurney rolling across the floor. The group froze, their breath caught in their throats. That wasn't the wind, Anna whispered. The whispers returned, louder this time, circling them like a chorus of disembodied voices. Faint figures began to form in the dim light, their shapes flickering like dying flames. The group backed toward the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening bang. They were trapped, the shadows growing thicker around them. And then the lights went out. Chapter 2, The Hollowed Wings. The surgical wing was a labyrinth of decay and shadows. Rusted scalpels and broken syringes littered the ground, crunching under their hesitant steps. Faint remnants of faded anatomical diagrams clung to the peeling walls, their images warped by time. The air grew heavier, saturated with a metallic tang that none of them could place. This place feels wrong, Anna murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Blake led the group, his flashlight trembling in his grip. Come on, it's just a building. Hospitals always feel creepy at night. But this isn't just any hospital, Marcus countered. His voice was strained, his gaze darting to every shadow. This is where they did the experiments. The journal said the surgical wing was where it all happened, where they tried to cure the plague by cutting it out of people. Kelly, who had been unusually quiet, lagged behind the group, her head tilted as if listening to something they couldn't hear. They're still here, she muttered under her breath. What? Anna turned sharply. Kelly blinked, her expression vacant for a moment before she smiled faintly. Nothing. Let's keep going. The hallway stretched endlessly, each room revealing a glimpse of horrors long past. In one, a row of cracked operating tables stood beneath rusted chains dangling from the ceiling. In another, faded bloodstains streaked the floor, as if someone had been dragged away. Blake's camera whirred softly as he filmed the macabre sights. This is perfect, he muttered. People are going to eat this up. But as he panned his flashlight across the far corner of the room, something moved. A shadow shifted unnaturally, detaching itself from the darkness. It hovered for a moment before disappearing into the wall. Did you see that? Anna's voice was tight, her grip on her flashlight white-knuckled. Blake didn't answer. He was staring at his camera screen, replaying the footage. The shadow hadn't disappeared. It had turned, revealing the faint outline of a face, gaunt and hollow, with empty eyes that seemed to stare back at them. A faint, high-pitched giggle echoed down the corridor. It was a sound that didn't belong, childish and cruel, yet laced with an undertone of suffering. The group froze. "That wasn't any of us," Marcus whispered. "No kidding." Anna snapped, her nerves fraying. Kelly stepped forward suddenly, her movements jerky and unnatural. She pressed her hand to the nearest wall, tracing its cracks and grime as if searching for something. "They're so loud here," she murmured. "What are you talking about?" Marcus asked, his voice sharp. Kelly's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide and glassy. "The voices. Don't you hear them? They're screaming for help, begging to be let out." Anna reached for Kelly's arm. "Kelly, stop it. You're scaring me." Kelly turned to face her fully, her expression shifting into something alien. Her lips twisted into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can't help them. They belong here." A loud crash shattered the tension, the sound of metal clattering against the floor. One of the operating tables had tipped over, though no one had touched it. "Okay, we're leaving. Now," Blake said, his voice unsteady. But Kelly didn't move. She was staring at the far wall, where a faint figure had begun to emerge. The apparition was translucent, its form flickering like a faulty light. It was a woman, her hospital gown stained with dark patches. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, and her hollow eyes locked onto the group. The temperature plummeted. Their breath fogged the air as the lights above them buzzed violently, dimming and flaring in erratic bursts. Anna grabbed Kelly's arm and yanked her back. "We need to go." As they turned to flee, Kelly stumbled, her legs buckling beneath her, as if she were being held back by invisible hands. She gasped, her body convulsing, and when she looked up, her eyes were pitch black. "They want you to stay," Kelly whispered, her voice distorted and layered, as though someone else were speaking through her. "Marcus, help me!" Anna cried, struggling to pull Kelly away from whatever force had overtaken her. Marcus grabbed Kelly's other arm, and together they dragged her down the corridor. Behind them, the ghostly figure began to multiply, dozens of spectral faces materializing in the darkness. Their mouths moved in silent, mournful cries, their hands outstretched as if trying to drag the group back. When they finally burst through the double doors at the end of the hallway, the air felt suffocating, heavy with despair. Kelly collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. She looked up at them, her eyes returning to normal. "We shouldn't have come here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We woke them up." Chapter 3. The Plague Doctor's Curse. Marcus sat cross-legged on the cold, cracked tiles, flipping through the fragile pages of the journal. His hands trembled as he pieced together the fragmented entries, each word painting a darker picture of the hospital's history. "Dr. Orson Hall," he read aloud, his voice echoing in the oppressive silence. "They called him the Plague Doctor. He promised miracles, curing the incurable, banishing the plague. But he was hiding something." Anna, standing by the doorway, shot him a wary glance. "What do you mean? Hiding something?" Marcus held up the journal, his face pale. The patients weren't just dying from the plague. They were dying because of him. The experiments, the surgeries, he wasn't curing anyone. He was dissecting them, searching for something inside of them. The nurses started calling him a monster in secret. Kelly, sitting apart from the group, hugged her knees to her chest. Her head was tilted to the side, her eyes unfocused, as if she were listening to a sound none of them could hear. "He's still here," she whispered, her voice unnervingly calm. "Don't start that again," Blake said, glaring at her. "We've got enough problems without you going all creepy on us." But Kelly didn't respond. Instead, she began to hum, a soft, lilting tune that felt out of place. Too cheerful, too childlike. "Kelly," Anna said, taking a cautious step toward her. "Are you okay?" Kelly's head snapped up, her lips curling into a sinister smile. "He's coming," she said, her voice layered with an unnatural resonance. "He doesn't like trespassers." Suddenly, the lights above them flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness before flaring back on. Kelly let out a guttural scream, her body jerking as if an electric current had passed through her. "Kelly!" Marcus lunged toward her, but she lashed out, her movements unnaturally strong and erratic. She shoved him backward with a force that sent him sprawling. Anna grabbed a rusted chair and held it between them like a shield. What the hell is happening to her? Kelly's head twisted unnaturally, her blackened eyes locking onto Anna. You're all part of the cure, she snarled, her voice unrecognizable. Blake grabbed Marcus by the arm, dragging him to his feet. We have to subdue her. Before they could act, Kelly lunged, slamming Anna against the wall. Her fingers tightened around Anna's throat, cutting off her screams. He's inside me now, she hissed, her breath reeking of rot. Blake charged, tackling Kelly to the floor. The two struggled, Kelly's strength far surpassing her small frame. It took Marcus and Anna both to pin her down, her body thrashing violently beneath their grip. We need to do something, Marcus yelled. Blake's flashlight flickered, and in its uneven glow, they saw it, the faint outline of a figure standing in the corner of the room. The figure wore a long coat, its edges frayed, and a beaked mask that gleamed in the dim light. Its hollow eyes seemed to pierce through them, radiating an aura of malice. The plague doctor, Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. The figure didn't move, but the air grew heavier, choking them with its oppressive weight. Kelly stopped thrashing and began to laugh, a low, guttural sound that sent chills down their spines. You can't leave, she said, her voice eerily calm. He won't let you. As if in response, a deafening clang echoed through the hospital. The doors and windows slammed shut. Chapter 4. The final hour. The hospital was no longer a place. It was alive. The walls pulsed with a sinister energy, the very fabric of reality twisting as the group raced through the labyrinthine corridors. Doors slammed shut behind them, cutting off any chance of retreat, while ghostly whispers filled the air, taunting and guiding them deeper into the heart of the building. Anna clutched the journal tightly to her chest, its pages revealing a grim truth. The hospital's spirits were bound by their pain, trapped in an endless loop of suffering. The plague doctor's experiments had torn open something unnatural, and now the dead needed the living to escape. We have to end this, Anna shouted, her voice raw with desperation. Blake, bloodied and limping, shook his head. How? There's no way out. We're gonna die here. Kelly was gone, her possession complete. She roamed the halls with hollow eyes, her laughter echoing like shattered glass. Marcus had disappeared moments earlier, dragged into the shadows by unseen hands. Only Anna and Blake remained, their strength waning as the hospital tightened its grip on them. The journal had mentioned a ritual, a way to sever the spirit's connection to the living. But it came at a cost. The ritual required a willing sacrifice, someone to absorb the spirit's pain and carry it out into the world. Anna stared at Blake, tears streaming down her face. It's the only way. No, he said firmly. We'll find another way. We'll fight our way out. But Anna knew better. The hospital wouldn't let them leave. Not all of them. I'll do it, she whispered, her voice trembling. Before Blake could protest, Anna began reciting the words from the journal. The air grew heavy, the walls vibrating with an otherworldly hum. Shadows swirled around her, their forms coalescing into grotesque faces twisted with anguish. Blake screamed her name, but Anna's voice rose above the cacophony, her determination unyielding. The spirits surged toward her, their wails deafening as they were drawn into her body. The ritual worked. The hospital fell silent, its oppressive energy dissipating. Blake stumbled to Anna's side, his relief turning to horror as he saw her eyes, black as coal, reflecting the agony of countless souls. Run, she whispered. Blake hesitated, but the building began to tremble, cracks spidering across the walls. He turned and fled, the sound of Anna's screams chasing him down the hall. Weeks later, Blake sat alone in his apartment, haunted by the memories of Saint Marlowe. The hospital had collapsed that night, sealing its dark history beneath rubble. But the nightmares remained, visions of Anna's hollow gaze, the whispers that now followed him wherever he went. One night, he awoke to find a familiar journal on his bedside table, its pages open to a final entry that hadn't been there before. The curse spreads. The hospital lives within me now. Beware those who enter. My whispers will guide them. As Blake read the words, a soft chuckle filled the room, and the temperature dropped. Saint Marlowe wasn't finished. It had found a new host. If you enjoyed tonight's spine-chilling stories, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next tale. Remember, when darkness falls, nothing is ever truly safe. Until we meet again, keep your lights dim, lock your doors tight, and never take your eyes off the shadows. You never know what's lurking out there, waiting for you.